Welcome to the Hindu Daily.
It's great to be back. We have quite the stack today. We're going from the ground up, literally, with wetlands, all the way to collapsing black holes.
We really do, so let's just dive right in. The first piece is an editorial tied to World Wetlands Day 2026. And the theme is wetlands and traditional knowledge.
Right. And you hear a theme like that, celebrating cultural heritage, and you might think it's a bit soft.
A little bit abstract, maybe, like folk songs about rivers.
Exactly. But this editorial makes a very strong case that in India, this isn't just about folklore. It's about, well, hard engineering. It's about technology.
Yeah, technology, how so?
Well, the piece argues that we need to stop seeing these wetlands as just, natural swamps. For centuries, they were managed ecosystems. It brings up the kulams in Tamil Nadu.
The temple tanks, I've seen them.
We think of them as temple tanks now, sure. But their original function was far more critical. They were the key components in these incredible cascading irrigation systems.
Okay, break that down for me. What does a cascading system actually do?
Imagine you carve a series of massive, shallow bowls into a sloping landscape. During the monsoon, the highest bowl fills up, but it's designed to overflow in a very specific way.
Ah, so it doesn't just flood randomly.
Not at all. The overflow is channeled purely by gravity into the next bowl down the line, which then fills and overflows into the next. It's a distributed system.
So it's like a circuit board, but for water. It's moving water from where there's too much to where there isn't enough.
That is a perfect analogy. A hydraulic circuit board built hundreds of years ago. That's the culture they're talking about. Functional, life-saving heritage.
The editorial also mentions something called the Keenis in Kerala.
Yes, in Wayanad. This is fascinating. The Kuruma tribe, over 200 years ago, developed these shallow, cylindrical wells right in the middle of wetlands.
But how do you build a well in what's essentially mud?
That's the genius of it. They didn't use stone or concrete. They used the bark of a specific tree, woven in a particular way. This weave acts as a natural filter. It lets the clean water seep in, but keeps the mud and silt out.
And these are still in use.
Many of them. And here's the kicker. They often provide clean drinking water in the peak of summer when modern concrete bore wells have run completely dry. It's a living technology.
Okay, so this is an incredible legacy, but the editorial pivots, and it pivots hard, from celebrating this heritage to talking about a crisis.
It has to.
Yeah.
Because the reality on the ground is just devastating. The numbers are, frankly, unbelievable. We've lost 30% of India's wetlands.
Wait, say that again? 40%?
40% vanished in just the last 3 decades.
That's within most of our lifetimes, and the ones that are left.
Of the 60% that remain, the editorial says half of those are degraded, polluted, encroached upon. We're watching the kidneys of our landscape fail in real time.
So what's the main cause? Is it all climate change?
Climate change makes everything worse, but the direct cause is much simpler. It's land use. We see a wetland, and we call it a wasteland.
So a developer sees it as a cheap place to build.
A cheap place to dump rubble, fill it with dirt, and put up an apartment block. We are literally paving over our own flood protection. And then there's the pollution. Eutrophication.
The algae bloom.
Exactly. We pump untreated sewage and agricultural runoff into these water bodies. The algae explodes, consumes all the oxygen, and the entire ecosystem just dies.
We do have laws, though. The wetlands rules from 2017. Why aren't they stopping this?
Because a rule on a piece of paper is no match for a bulldozer on the ground. The editorial is clear. It's an implementation crisis. We manage water in these departmental silos.
The water department doesn't talk to the planning department, who doesn't talk to the sanitation department.
You've got it. So the solution proposed is watershed-scale governance. You can't protect a pond by drawing a line around it. You have to protect the entire area that drains into that pond.
And they suggest using tech to save this traditional knowledge.
I love the irony. The updated NPCA guidelines, that's the National Plan for Conservation of Aquatic Ecosystems, they're pushing for satellite remote sensing and drones.
So we use eyes in the sky to protect 200-year-old wooden wells.
That's modern conservation in a nutshell. You map the boundaries digitally, and when an encroachment starts, you get an alert before the first truckload of concrete is even poured.
It's a fascinating blend of old and new. And speaking of development, let's shift gears from the wetlands to the economic engine that's often driving this kind of change.
A very powerful engine in this case.
Our second editorial looks at the Economic Survey of India for 2025-26 with a laser focus on Tamil Nadu. And the numbers, well, they jump off the page.
They're eye-watering, really. Tamil Nadu is being called the Vanguard state. For 2024-25, they posted a real growth rate of 11.19%.
11%. I have to ask, is that real growth or is it just inflation making things look good?
Nope, that's real inflation-adjusted growth. To see double-digit growth in an economy of that scale, it's now the second largest state economy in India. It's remarkable.
So what's driving it? When I think of growth in South India, my mind immediately goes to IT and services.
And that's the surprising part of this story. This isn't primarily a software story. It's a manufacturing story. The manufacturing sector in Tamil Nadu grew at 14.74%.
And what's the national average for comparison?
The all-India average was 4.5%.
So they're industrializing more than 3 times faster than the rest of the country. How? What's the secret sauce?
It seems to be a mastery of the cluster model. Take the electronics hub at Sri Perumbudu. They didn't just convince one big phone company to open a factory.
They built an entire ecosystem around it.
Exactly. They brought in the company that makes the screen glass, the one that packages the chips, the one that molds the plastic casings, the logistics firms. They're all located within a few kilometers of each other. It creates this industrial gravity.
And we see that in other sectors, too.
Absolutely. Electronics in Sri Perumbudu are a massive automotive hub around Chennai. And get this, 85% of India's entire cement industry is concentrated in Tamil Nadu.
The export numbers were also pretty wild. They nearly doubled.
They did. From about $26 billion in 2020-21 to over $52 billion in 2024-25. That's a huge signal. It tells you the world wants to buy what Tamil Nadu is making.
This sounds like the China plus one strategy playing out in real time.
It is the textbook definition of it. Global supply chains are diversifying, and Tamil Nadu has put up a giant sign that says, we're open for business and we're efficient.
But the editorial also points out that this isn't just about being the world's workshop. There's a green angle to this.
And this is the really forward-thinking part. They understand that future customers, especially in Europe and the U.S., are going to demand low-carbon products. So they're getting ahead of the curve.
With green hydrogen, we hear that term a lot. Is it real or just a buzzword?
They're making it real. The VO Chidambaram port is being developed as a green hydrogen hub. The target is 5 million metric tons a year by 2030. It's ambitious, but given their huge installed base of wind power, it's actually plausible.
And if they pull it off, their exports get a green premium.
Precisely. Now, this kind of high-tech growth doesn't happen in a vacuum. The survey also highlights the social infrastructure.
Right. It's not just about machines.
Not at all. You need a skilled workforce. Tamil Nadu has 17 institutions in the top 100 of the national NIRF rankings. That's the pipeline of engineers and managers. And then you have the Thazi hostels.
The hostels for working women. Tell me more about that.
This is such a critical piece of the puzzle. You can build all the factories you want, but if women can't safely and affordably live near them, you're leaving half your workforce on the sidelines. These hostels are treated as essential economic infrastructure, not just a social welfare scheme.
It's a holistic approach. Okay, so we've got massive industrialization, which means rapid urbanization. Which brings us to our next piece, an opinion article on funding for cities.
Yes, this is about the recommendations from the 16th Finance Commission for Urban Local Governments. And basically, it's raining money.
They call it an urban windfall, right? How big a windfall are we talking about?
Let's put it in perspective. The 15th Finance Commission allocated about 1.55 lakh crore for urban bodies. The 16th has more than double that. The new figure is 3.56 lakh crore for the 2026 to 2031 period.
Wow. That is a huge jump. What does that signal?
It signals a recognition of reality. India is urbanizing fast. If you go back to the 10th Finance Commission in the mid-90s, the split of funds was something like 81% for rural areas and only 10% for urban.
A completely different country, really.
It was. Now, the 16th FC has the split at 55% rural, 45% urban. They're finally putting the money where the people are.
But looking at the state-by-state numbers, it's not an even distribution. Some states are big winners and some not so much.
Not at all. This is a massive redistribution based on performance and need.
Right.
Kerala's allocation, for example, is up by a staggering 415%.
415?
You heard that right. Goa is up 387%, Maharashtra up 303%. These are states with significant and often well-managed urban populations.
And on the other end of the spectrum?
Himachal Pradesh's share is down by 49%. Bihar's is down by about 8%. The formula is clearly rewarding certain kinds of urban growth.
Now, this isn't just a blank check, is it? The article mentions there are strings attached to this money.
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot of fine print here, and it's designed to enforce fiscal discipline. About 2/3 of the money comes as basic grants, which cities have flexibility on.
But the rest is tied.
Yes, tied grants. And they're tied specifically to things like sanitation, solid waste management, and drinking water. And here's a really interesting detail. They put a 20% cap on how much can be spent on roads.
That's fascinating. Why would they cap road spending? That's usually the most visible thing a politician can do.
And that's exactly why they capped it. It's easy to get votes by paving a road. It's much harder and less visible to upgrade a sewage treatment plant or fix a leaky water main.
So the commission is forcing cities to invest in the unsexy but critical stuff.
Precisely. The stuff that stops cities from flooding and prevents disease. And there's another catch, what they call the urbanization premium.
An incentive for good behavior?
A strong one. To get their full share of the performance grants, cities have to show a minimum 5% annual increase in their own revenue.
So basically, if you want our money, you'd better get serious about clutching your own property taxes.
That's the long and short of it. It's a powerful nudge towards self-sufficiency.
Okay, let's step away from balance sheets and head to the windy, impenetrable forest in Uganda. We have a science profile here of Dr. Gladys Kalema-Zikusoka. Her story is just incredible.
It's cinematic. It really is. She was Uganda's very first wildlife veterinarian. But you can't understand her work without understanding the history of the country.
She grew up during the Idi Amin regime.
Yes, and her family was directly impacted. Her father was a prominent politician, and he was abducted and murdered by Amin's regime when she was only 2. That era didn't just tear apart the country's social fabric, it decimated the wildlife.
Poaching became rampant.
Completely out of control. The elephant population, for instance, collapsed to around 1,200 animals. It was a free-for-all. And it's out of that national trauma that she emerges and decides to dedicate her life to healing the natural world.
And she develops this revolutionary concept called the One Health model. What does that mean?
It started with a health mystery. She noticed that the iconic mountain gorillas were getting sick. They were losing their fur and developing these awful, scaly skin patches.
It was scabies, wasn't it?
It was scabies. But the question was, where was it coming from? And she traced it back to the human communities living on the edge of the park. These were impoverished communities with very little access to healthcare or sanitation.
So the disease was jumping from humans to the gorillas.
Exactly. And that was her eureka moment. You can't say the animals and the people living next to them are sick and struggling. The health of the ecosystem and the health of the human community are one and the same.
One Health.
That's it. So she founded an organization called CTPH Conservation through public health. They started by setting up health clinics for the local people. They taught hygiene. They provided health care. And by making the humans healthier, they made the gorillas healthier.
It's so logical, yet it feels so revolutionary compared to the old fences and guards model of conservation.
Completely. And it builds trust. It makes the local community partners in conservation, not enemies of it.
There's a really moving anecdote in the profile about a silverback named Mugurusi.
Yes, Mugurusi, which means old man. He was a beloved, well-known silverback. When he died of natural causes, Dr. Kalema-Zikusoka performed the autopsy.
And what does she find?
She found he died of heart and kidney failure, basically old age. The same things an elderly human might die from. And when this was reported in the Ugandan media, it had a profound impact.
It humanized him.
It totally humanized him. People were shocked. They thought, wow, they died just like we do. It forged this deep emotional connection between the public and the gorillas, which is more powerful than any law or fence.
And she had a connection to Jane Goodall, another icon of conservation.
Yes, Goodall wrote the foreword to her book. And the lesson she says she learned from Jane Goodall was how to be powerful without being loud. In a very male-dominated field, in a country recovering from deep trauma, she just did the work. Quietly, effectively, let the results speak for themselves.
She ends with this observation about gorilla parenting that really stuck with me.
The birth spacing. It's fascinating. A mother gorilla gives birth only once every 4.5 years, on average. She does this to ensure that her older offspring is fully weaned and emotionally independent before the next baby arrives.
It's a level of intentionality that's pretty humbling.
Her quote is, "Gorillas are what we want to be. They're better planners, better parents."
Well, from the very tangible biology of gorillas, let's make a jump to the completely intangible fabric of the universe. The next science piece is about gravitational waves.
And this is just, it's mind-bending stuff. On January 14, 2025, the LIGO and Virgo detectors picked up a signal, GW250114.
Another catchy name.
They're not great with names. But this signal was different. It was described as the loudest gravitational wave ever detected.
Now, when you say loud, you don't mean we could hear it with our
No,
ears.
not at all. It means that for the incredibly sensitive detectors, the signal was exceptionally clear and strong. It stood out dramatically from the background noise. And because it was so clean, it allowed scientists to test one of Einstein's predictions with unprecedented accuracy.
The Ringdown. Okay, I'm going to need you to walk me through this.
Of course. So imagine two massive black holes have been spiraling toward each other for millions of years. They finally collide and merge into one, even bigger black hole,
A cataclysmic event.
the most violent event in the universe. Now, that newly formed single black hole isn't perfectly stable at first. It wobbles, it vibrates, kind of like a bell that's just been struck.
A bell made of space-time.
That's a great way to put it. Space-time itself rings. And that vibration, as it settles down into a perfect sphere, is the ring down. And Einstein's theory of general relativity predicts the exact frequency and decay of that ring.
And did the signal match the prediction?
It matched it perfectly. And in doing so, it confirmed something called the no-hair theorem.
Which is my favorite name for a theorem in all of physics.
It's a good one. It basically states that a black hole is a very simple object. It's defined only by its mass and its spin. It has no other features, no bumps, no mountains, no hair.
That's perfectly smooth.
Perfectly smooth. If it had hair, the ring-down signal would have been messy and complex. But this signal was pure, a perfect match for the Kerr metric that describes rotating black holes. Einstein was right. Again.
The article also mentions it confirmed another theorem from Stephen Hawking.
Yes, Hawking's area theorem. This says that the surface area of a black hole's event horizon can never decrease. And this event confirmed that with what they call a 4.8 sigma significance.
Which in layman's terms means?
It means we are very, very, very sure that this is not a fluke. And the incredible thing is, we're about to get even better at this. The new LIGO observatory coming online in Maharashtra will give us another data point.
Better triangulation.
An order of magnitude better. We're truly opening a new window onto the cosmos.
Well, let's come crashing back down to Earth, and specifically to Maharashtra, for our next piece. We're moving from cosmic collisions to human ones. A Text in Context article about the Maharashtra Long March.
Right. This is about a protest in January 2025 where thousands of tribal farmers marched from Palghar and Nashik. And it really gets to the heart of a fundamental problem. The gap between a law being passed and a law being felt.
And the law in question is the Forest Rights Act of 2006.
Exactly. This act was supposed to grant individual land titles to tribal communities who have been farming these forest lands for generations.
But that hasn't happened.
It's been incredibly patchy. Many of the titles are still in the name of the entire village, not the individual family. And you might think, what's the difference? Well, the difference is everything in the modern economy.
If you don't have an individual title, you can't get a loan.
You can't get a bank loan for seeds. You can't sign up for government benefit schemes like PM Kisan. You can't get crop insurance. You are, for all financial purposes, invisible.
And the rejection rate for these claims is shocking.
It is. The article says over 45% of claims have been rejected. The government says they've distributed over 200,000 titles, but even they admit to interpretation differences and this is a great phrase, digitization issues.
Which sounds like a very polite way of saying the bureaucracy lost the paperwork.
It's often exactly that.
Yeah.
But the march wasn't just about land titles. Water was another huge demand.
They want river linking projects.
Yes. They're asking for projects to divert some of the west-flowing rivers, which flood the coast, and channel that water eastward to the dry plateau where they live.
What would that change for them?
It would change everything. Right now, they can only grow one rain-fed crop a year, usually paddy. With year-round irrigation, they could grow multiple crops, cash crops. It's the difference between subsistence and prosperity.
The article ends with a quote from the late ecologist Madhav Gedgil.
Yes, and it frames the central conflict perfectly. He spoke of the tension between what he called traditional conservation, the idea that you protect a forest by keeping people out of it.
The fortress conservation model.
Exactly, versus the forest rights model, which says that the people who have lived in and depended on the forest for centuries are actually its best protectors. And that philosophical clash is what's causing so much of this bureaucratic paralysis.
Let's stick with the theme of rural livelihoods, but shift our focus. Our next piece is another Text in Context, and it's about what it calls a silent revolution in rural women's entrepreneurship.
This is the story of the day, NRLM. Is that a mouthful? The Deen Dayal Antyodaya Yojana National Rural Livelihoods Mission. but the scale of it is just immense.
Give me the big numbers.
We're talking about 10 crore households. That's 10 crore families mobilized into 91 lakh self-help groups, or SHGs.
These are the SHGs we hear so much about.
Yes. And the result has been the rise of the Lakhpati Didis. These are women who are now earning more than 1 lakh rupees a year from their enterprises.
And how many of them are there?
The number has crossed 2 crore. 2 crore women lifted into a new economic bracket. And the most stunning number, for me, is the financial discipline. These groups have accessed over 11 lakh crore in credit from banks.
An enormous amount of money. What's the default rate?
The non-performing asset rate, the NPA, is just 1.7%.
1.7. That's better than most major corporate lenders.
It's astronomically better. It proves that poor rural women are among the most reliable borrowers in the entire country. But the article argues that this successful model is now hitting a structural ceiling.
It's time for version 2.0. What are the challenges?
A couple of big ones. First, the federations that govern these groups are often still run by government officials, not by the women themselves. There's a power dynamic that needs to shift. But the bigger issue is the credit model.
The group loan system.
Right. It works brilliantly for small loans. But what if one of these Lakhpati Didis wants to scale up? She wants to move from making pickles in her kitchen to opening a small factory. She needs a much larger individual loan.
But she has no individual credit history.
Exactly. Her entire financial identity is tied to the group. So the big push now is to get these women individual CIBIL scores, individual credit histories, so they can access larger loans from the formal banking sector.
And the other piece is marketing.
A huge piece. It's one thing to make a great product. It's another thing to get it onto a shelf in a supermarket in Delhi or Mumbai. The article calls for a dedicated marketing vertical.
So professional branding, packaging, supply chain logistics.
All of it. The idea is to create a cell within NTI-OG to connect these incredible rural producers with national and even global markets. It's the logical next step.
Okay, from microloans in rural India to the macro movements of global capital. Our first business story is about a shift in strategy among the world's biggest hedge funds.
This is the view from 30,000 feet. And in 2025, it looks like the view is changing. For years, the default strategy for big money was invest in America. That's starting to change.
They're diversifying away from the U.S. Is the U.S. economy in trouble?
I wouldn't say trouble. It's more that the U.S. trade has become what they call crowded. Everyone owns the same stocks, the Magnificent Seven tech giants. The easy money has been made.
So fund managers are looking for growth and value elsewhere. Where are they looking?
2 main regions, Asia and Europe. The data from Goldman Sachs shows that, on a net basis, allocations to Asia are up 13%. And surprisingly, a BNP Paribas survey found that Europe is now the most sought-after region.
Europe. But the narrative we always hear is that Europe's economy is stagnant.
It's all about relative value. U.S. stocks are perceived as expensive. European stocks are, by comparison, cheap. You also have worries about U.S. policy uncertainty and a potentially weaker dollar, which makes overseas assets more attractive.
But the article includes an important nuance, a quote that says, "This shift feels structural rather than tactical." What does that mean?
That's the key insight. A tactical shift is a short-term bet. You move money for a few months to catch a trend. A structural shift is a long-term change in philosophy.
So it's not a panic, it's a rebalancing.
Exactly. It's investors realizing that having 60 or 70% of their portfolio tied to one single country's economy is probably not a prudent long-term strategy, no matter how strong that country is.
Well, speaking of Europe, our very next story suggests that while hedge funds may be optimistic, the situation on the ground is complicated. This is about the EU's massive Next Generation Recovery Fund.
Yes, the 955 billion question. This fund was created 6 years ago, after the pandemic, with 2 goals: rescue the economy and future-proof it through digitalization and decarbonization.
And the article mentions some cool-sounding projects, like using drones in Spanish olive groves.
There are definitely some good stories, but the broader picture is one of frustration and bottlenecks. The EU has the money, but the member states are struggling to actually spend it effectively.
What's the problem? Bureaucracy.
That's a huge part of it. Red tape. Italy, for instance, had to revise its national spending plan 6 different times. Spain actually had to renounce over 60 billion euros in loans because they couldn't overcome the supply chain and technical hurdles to use it.
They gave back 60 billion euros.
They had to. They couldn't spend it. And then there's the criticism that a lot of the money that is being spent is purely cosmetic.
What do they mean by that?
Instead of funding genuine structural change, The money is going to things like repainting tourist centers or putting up new signs on hiking trails. Things that look nice, but don't fundamentally change the economy's productivity.
And there's a bigger issue, what the article calls the business model problem.
This is the sustainability trap. The EU money is great for building a new project, let's say a digital health platform, but the grant only pays for the setup. It doesn't pay for the ongoing costs.
So who pays the software engineers and for the server costs in 5 years?
Nobody knows. There's no plan for how these projects will sustain themselves once the EU funding tap is turned off. It's a huge flaw in the design. Many countries are now asking for extensions beyond the 2026 deadline, just so they have more time to figure out how to spend this mountain of cash.
It's an incredible paradox. You have global investors eager to put money into Europe, while Europe itself is struggling to deploy its own funds.
The market and the state moving at very different speeds.
Finally, we turn to our foreign section, and this is a very sobering piece. It's an interview with Rohilat Afrin, a commander in the YPJ, the Women's Protection Units in Syria.
Yes, this is a critical update on a conflict that I think for many has fallen off the radar. After the Assad regime collapsed in December of 2024, the hope was for peace. The reality has been a power vacuum and more violence.
So who is fighting now?
It's a chaotic mess. The new interim government, the SIG, is now in conflict with the Kurdish-led SDF and YPJ forces in the northeast of the country. And into this chaos, a familiar monster is re-emerging, ISIS.
The article says ISIS fighters were released from prisons?
This is the most alarming part. The report from Commander Afrin is that in the town of Shaddadi, forces allied with the new government released some 2,000 ISIS prisoners.
2,000? Why on earth would they do that?
It's a deeply cynical tactic to create instability, to use them as a proxy force to attack the Kurds. It's playing with fire in a way that could engulf the entire region again.
Commander Afrin argues that this isn't just a fight over territory, though. It's a fight over an idea, a model.
The Danis, the Democratic Autonomous Administration of North and East Syria. This is the unique political system that the Kurds and their allies built in their region. It's decentralized, it's multi-ethnic, and it's fundamentally feminist.
This is the system where every leadership position has to be co-chaired by a man and a woman.
Right? That's a key feature, yes. And her argument is that this model is an existential threat to the centralizing nationalist vision of the new government. They can't tolerate an alternative model of governance, especially one led by women on their borders.
And the tactics being used against them are just brutal.
They are medieval. Siege warfare. The article mentions cutting off water and electricity to entire regions in the middle of winter, and the systematic use of sexual violence as a weapon of war.
Targeting women specifically. To terrorize communities, to force them to flee, and to break the spirit of this unique, women-led political project.
It's a very stark reminder that while we discuss economic growth and gravitational waves, for so many people, the daily struggle is simply for survival and the right to exist under a system they choose for themselves.
It really does put everything else in perspective.
Thank you for listening. If you want to provide suggestions, please contact on the Twitter handle given in the episode description. As always, we are eager to hear what our listeners want to be informed about. We wish you a great day.